All set, thank you. Welcome, everybody, to the December 21st meeting of the Finance Board. We'll call the meeting to order at 5:41, our last meeting of the calendar year. So, we have an agenda tonight of several items that have sort of been ongoing, and we want to just put some of them officially into place and have some follow-up discussions and what have you. And really, this is, I consider these items fairly bookkeeping kind of items to get us prepared to go into our budgeting season at the new calendar year. So the first item on the agenda was our fiscal year '24 goals. We discussed this at our last meeting, which was on November 16th. The goals are presented annually in the budget book, and the town administrator, Rebecca, passed them out to us at our last meeting. They've been distributed via email to this group. They're the same goals that have been, or primarily the same goals that have been in the budget book for the last, at least I'm going to say 5 years. And they really just talk about the general community goals that are being considered as the budget is prepared. We had a joint meeting of the Finance Board and the Board of Selectmen in November 21st. That it wasn't technically a Finance Board meeting because we didn't have quorum, but a couple of us were there representing the Finance Board. And the Board of Selectmen wanted, in conversation, they were asking if we had reviewed those goals and if we had had an official vote. And they voted to adopt those goals. And so I think it would be appropriate for us to also just adopt the goals officially by this board, or have a vote and a discussion to that. And just to really show our support and our general consensus, this board, the Board of Selectmen, and the town administrator in the planning. So that sounds reasonable to everybody. If anybody would like to make a motion in that regard.
I can make the motion to approve or approve the statement of goals as presented by the town administrator and as approved by the Board of Selectmen.
Does anybody want to second that
I'll second.
motion? You'll second that? So is there any further discussion on the goals as presented to us and as will be represented in the budget book? No further, okay, so all in favor? Yes, 1, 2, 3, 4, unanimous. Thank you. The next agenda item is the financial policies. These were presented to us by Town Administrator Rebecca Oldham. We reviewed them at our last Finance Committee meeting on November 16th. They were distributed to us ahead of that meeting. So those goals have been, or pardon me, financial policies have been assembled. I would like to also formally adopt our approval or support of those policies. Rebecca, could you talk just a little bit about the next agenda item is the Division of Local Services Financial Review, which in that review, they did request that we update our financial policies. So that was part of where this came about. But if you would just talk a little bit about where the policies came from, how you pulled them, and from what sort of guidelines.
Of course. So essentially,
taking into consideration some of the feedback that we had received from our auditors over the last few years and part of their management reports that we had received, we had noted that we were lacking in our financial policies and needed to get something that was a official document that we could hold ourselves accountable with and work from moving forward. And as part of our initial DLS review, both Frank and Zach had come to the town hall and we had had multiple conversations, and they had mentioned that some of the other management reviews that they had done for some of the other communities in the state involved helping with the draft of financial policies, and that if we wanted to, we could do the same. So essentially what we did instead is that we looked at what they were able to produce for other communities, and we went through both the town accountant, the town treasurer collector, myself, the assessor, as well as the water and sewer superintendent, and we took a look at the policies presented in the neighboring communities, which are pretty standard and pretty much a template, and point to best management practices that are identified as part of the DLS, or they actually point to Massachusetts general law and what is required. And we took essentially what they had provided as a template for other communities, and we adjusted it to the town of Groveland. So there was a few tweaks based upon the current practices that we have in place, and we just used their language that they had put forward and just kind of solidified the document and made it our own.
Okay. Oh, I know. The one policy I wanted to ask you about was under grants management. All departments are encouraged to solicit grant funding for projects and programs consistent with the town's goals. The municipal applications for grants exceeding $5,000 must be pre-approved by the Board of Selectmen.
You have a old version that you're reading from. The current version that was adopted by the Board of Selectmen has that all municipal applications for grants exceeding $5,000 must receive approval by the town administrator.
Okay. So I like that. I was concerned that approval, just with the biweekly meeting schedule, that could become cumbersome.
It was a deterrent, very much so for that reason.
So I'm glad to hear that modification. I'm wondering now about the version of the policies that I've reviewed. Were there other material changes?
There wasn't anything material. It was more so corrections such as that, where one section of that policy in front of you, you'll see, if you go down, you'll see the application process, and it says go to the town administrator. But the first portion doesn't say the town administrator, it says the Board of Selectmen.
Okay.
So in the process, as we just outlined with copy, pasting, going from community to community, we found a couple of instances where they were conflicting because we copied from one town where
Okay.
they did it one way and they copied from another town. So we just went back and we made it consistent to be reflective of what we were
Okay.
saying up in the top and then what we were saying down at the bottom in terms of process.
Perfect.
So nothing else substantial in that nature, just more of that
Okay.
correction.
Okay. Then, my feeling, I've read through them, they all seem reasonable to me, and knowing that the policies are all based on Mass General Law and best practices as suggested by the Division of Local Services, and they all seem to me to be in line with really the work that we have been striving to achieve, then it seems reasonable to me. If anybody else has any questions or comments for Rebecca on any of the policies? No?
Rebecca, I have a question real quick. Like, some of the policies talk about, like, certain things needing to be completed within so many days. Like, how are we gonna be kind of monitoring that to make sure that's happening? And, like, how to improve the process if it's not?
So one of the things that we had discussed internally that we were really excited about was that this document outlined those deadlines a little bit more clearly. It was just kind of something that internally was like, oh, we typically try and set the tax rate by this date, or we typically try and do the year-end close by this date. And then obviously there's the statutory deadlines that we had to meet, but some of those others were more so like goals that we've always had but never really had written down. So internally, we were really excited that we finally have now a document to also hold us accountable to meeting those deadlines. So essentially, now the offices have been alerted of this new policy. So they have that calendar and that municipal calendar that's approved as to what we need to be doing by such and such a date. And so as part of our monthly finance meetings, that is something that we are making sure that we're staying on top of. So we're trying to see where we are, if we're expecting to meet that deadline, if we have any concerns, is there additional support or capacity that's needed in that office in order to meet that goal. So we are consistently bringing that with us to that meeting to say, all right, what's due, who's working on it, what do we need?
Okay.
So that will be an ongoing sort of working document to track how close the goals are being met, and then that is what measures resources.
Exactly, and the success of the policy, really.
Yeah. Great. So if there's no other questions, then if anybody feels comfortable in moving forward with adopting the policies, could go ahead and make a motion.
I can make a motion to adopt the financial, let me go back up to the top here.
Policies
The
manual.
financial policies manual.
I'll second that. Does anybody have any further questions or discussion? I would just make a comment that this manual is the manual itself is 55 pages long, and then there's an appendix with a lot of really great references. Every single policy is referenced, its source, its reference, where it came from. It's really well laid out. It was a lot of work, and it's clear, it's concise, and it really is a great roadmap for us to have as far as goals, plans. I think that there were policies theoretically in place in the past with turnover in personnel over the last couple of years. Without a policy manual like this being assembled, being together, and being adopted by this board and the Board of Selectmen, I think this is when processes kind of go to the wayside. So I think it's a great step, and I appreciate it very much, Rebecca, so great job. So that's my other comment. So otherwise, anyone, all in favor? Oh, sorry, yes?
I have one question.
Yeah,
As far as timing goes and,
yeah.
things like that, you said something to the effect that it would help measure the success of the goal. Wouldn't it measure the success of the performer?
That as well. Well, essentially, that's what I mean. Like, if you're aiming for that goal and you're not meeting it, why are we not meeting it? What do we need to fix in order to meet that goal?
Right. It may not be the goal that needs to be fixed.
Yes, I stand corrected.
It might be anything about the resources going toward the goal,
Or the process.
or the process, or anything. So if there's goals that are
variables.
continually not met, then you look at it. But without having a framework to identify the ideals and the hits and the misses, perpetual, then you just keep going along without really ever measuring the work. So,
I've always said, if you don't have a roadmap, you guarantee
That's
you're not gonna
right.
get there.
That's right. So,
And
okay.
for the viewers at home, if there's anybody who wants to take a look at the policies, they are available on our website underneath the Board of Selectmen webpage, underneath adopted policies.
Perfect. Thank you. So all in favor of the goals as, of the motion? Unanimous? Thank you. And the next agenda item, I believe, was the DLS financial review. So we've been talking about this for months. The Division of Local Services is a division of the Massachusetts Department of Revenue. They oversee the municipalities in the state, and they also provide guidance for best practices as these policies came from. So the Board of Selectmen, from the request initiated by the Finance Board, invited or requested the Division of Local Services to come in and do a review of our financial processes. And we just thought that that was an appropriate thing to do, given that we just put our first town administrator in place. And so it was a good opportunity for the review, which is an expert review, which is, by the way, free consulting to the town. Other towns take advantage of it, so we should too. So we did that, and they just came back, they presented us with the report, and they attended remotely. Two members who created the report attended the Board of Selectmen meeting on Monday. So as far as the general findings of that, I don't know, do you want me to touch on that? Rebecca, do you want to touch on it? The good news is that, I don't think there was really anything in that report that was a real surprise. I think that it shows that we really have a good idea of how we should be proceeding with our town administrator in place. They talked about the community profile. They gave us recommendations for comps as far as comparable communities. That comes up all the time when you're looking at any of our financial statistics versus comparable communities. So they provided a list of those. Their recommendations, I will very briefly touch on them. The first one was to conduct a comprehensive bylaw review. That's something that had been discussed. They talked about developing and adopting financial policies. That was a high-level discussion which had been implemented really in line with the review. So that's been taken into consideration. They recommended that the Board of Assessors transition from elected to appointed positions. Their conversation in that was that elected positions in the town are, in our town and in all towns across the state, it's becoming difficult to find the right people to be elected to a specialized board like the Board of Assessors. The Board of Assessors, along with the town administrator, along with any town employee, as time goes on, these jobs are becoming more specialized and more complicated. And so their recommendation, since we have had vacancies on that board, is that if it went from an elected, which needs to be a resident of the town, to an appointed member, then you can go outside of the town, the residents of the town, and maybe get a wider pool of applicants for that, and maybe get some specialists along the way, and that might add a little bit of depth into that board. The fourth topic was implementing a goal-setting process for the Board of Selectmen and the Town Administrator. So they're recommending that annually, the Board of Selectmen develop goals and work through those with the Town Administrator at the beginning of each fiscal year. The fifth one is something that is quite applicable to this group. Their recommendation is to hold quarterly financial presentations. We started putting into place a concept or a model of having annual meetings with the Board of Selectmen and the Finance Board. The Division of Local Services is recommending quarterly meetings, and they are also suggesting that it would be beneficial to invite Groveland's representatives of the Pentucket Regional School Committee to those quarterly meetings. So that's something that we'll, I think, discuss, see how that evolves as far as timing goes. I don't know if you're ready to talk about that now or how that's going to work, but it is at least the first introduction of us working more closely in harmony with the school and the Board of Selectmen as far as finances.
Yes, and I did make mention at the Board of Selectmen meeting on Monday that I have been in contact with our liaison, who is assigned by the school committee, Lana DeRocha. She is a Groveland resident and our Groveland representative on this, one of our Groveland representatives on the committee. And so she will be the liaison for the school committee and the Board of Selectmen and the town. And I had the pleasure of sitting down with Lana and going through what we hope to achieve out of this process. And she is looking forward to attending an upcoming Board of Selectmen meeting. So I think based upon what we are trying to do already before the report and trying to have at least yearly around the budget beginning process, and then again also during the budget process, sit-down meetings with the Board of Selectmen, we can now integrate having that representative and liaison from the school committee present, who wants to be present and wants to be part of the process, present as well. So I think we are making those progressive steps to achieve what is being recommended in a Groveland-like fashion.
Awesome. I like the word progressive steps. Words, progressive steps. The sixth item was to reactivate and consider organizing the capital planning committee. There was a capital planning committee, but that has gone defunct. So right now it has fallen to the Board of Selectmen. So they would like to see that come back together. That would take a recruitment effort and rebuilding of that committee. But meanwhile, we're going to talk about the capital plan after this. The seventh item is consider adding clerical support for the town administrator and the finance department heads. There used to be clerical support in that, I mean, we haven't had a town administrator, but the Board of Selectmen and the finance director had some clerical support. And now that we have a town administrator who is spread pretty thin, they are making a recommendation that there be some clerical support. The recommendation that they gave was that, rather than posting jobs, the town administrator could be better focusing their efforts on collective bargaining negotiation or succession planning for town departments. And so that's something that's been recommended and will be also an ongoing discussion. Then there's the peer community analysis, where they gave us some communities to compare ourselves to. So it was, I think, a comprehensive review. I think that there were no real, you need to do this, or any real surprises. I still think it was a very healthy exercise. The other side of it is that they gave us 2 spreadsheets of financial indicators and budget planning aids. And those are much too large to to print out for anybody, but those are posted also or the review is posted?
They are posted under the packet material items that were provided to the Board of Selectmen, but I can also post them specifically on the website underneath either the Finance Board or underneath the Board of Selectmen, or both. I know it was the Finance Board that initiated the process, so I'm not too sure if there's a desire to have it specifically in one location, or again, there's never a harm in having it in two locations either.
I guess 2 locations, and maybe people will be more apt to see it. I just think it's helpful information,
Of course.
and so I think that was a great exercise. I don't know if you have any other comments on that, Rebecca, or the content, or anybody else. Questions or comments? I mean, I think it was pretty straightforward. I read a lot of these financial reviews that DLS has written for other communities. And there were some real specific recommendations for them, some major recommendations for them, and that didn't apply here, so I think that's good news. I think that there was nothing that was new and surprising, or nothing that we didn't really anticipate, which is good news, so. Capital budget, I know that was on so this is the next agenda item, unless anyone has anything else. I think we're all set with the review. The capital budget was discussed at the last Board of Selectmen meeting, so I don't know if you want to review that here as well, or at what point you want our involvement of the capital budget.
So I can give you a rundown of what the projects that we are looking to fund in fiscal year '24, if you'd like, and then I can also give you an idea of what the Board of Selectmen would like to see funded and what funding sources they would like to use to fund those projects, if that would be helpful to the board.
Sure, if you think this is the time, or if you think that further in the budget cycle that should be discussed. Probably now is as good as any time, because the other meetings are going to be full of department reviews and.
Okay.
So-
So essentially, the capital plan that was shared with you originally with all of the projects is essentially the plan that's being adopted. So all of those projects we originally discussed, and we went down for, needs of right now, needs in the next 2 years, 3 years, 4 years, 5 years. What the Board of Selectmen had recently done is something we had not necessarily typically done in the past, is try to associate funding sources with those particular projects as seen for that particular fiscal year, and seeing how we would actually make those projects happen. So we presented to them 3 scenarios. All of the scenarios essentially left the amount of free cash at about $130,000. It does not propose to touch any of the stabilization fund. It does not propose to touch any of the capital stabilization fund. Currently, the stabilization fund is at $1.3 million. The capital stabilization is at $340,000. So essentially, based upon the policies that we were just looking at, those are not necessarily levels that we would really want to take from at this point in time. We would like to see them grow a little bit more. And if anything, we would like to add some of the free cash to both the stabilization fund and the capital to continue to make that investment. The other funds that were identified is the American Rescue funds that we were lucky to receive. We have $415,000 that has not been allocated by the Board of Selectmen at this point in time. So that was another funding source that we had identified. That changes in the 3 scenarios. Scenario 1 leaves that balance at $124,000. Scenario 2 leaves that balance at $169,000. And proposal 3 leaves that balance at $224,000. The other funding sources that we identified was the unused bond premiums, and that totaled about $44,956. So scenario 1 did not include utilizing either, any of those funds. Scenario 2 did propose using some of those funds. Those funds are not earning any interest, they're just sitting there. And so we thought it would be an opportunity to free up some of the monies that we have under the American Rescue funds that are a little bit more flexible and can be used throughout the year if something were to occur, and make sure that we had those sufficient funds. The last funding source that was included as potential option were the proceeds from the sale of a town building. We had discussed that a little bit more in detail at our last meeting, and that was for the $84,000, which we identified as something that came about from the sale of the Old Town Hall building over on Main Street. School Street. So that wasn't proposed to be used in scenario 1 or 2, but it was proposed in scenario 3, leaving a balance of about $29,000. The recommendation that I had put forward to the Board of Selectmen on Monday was scenario number 2. I felt as though it would be a good thing for the proceeds to maybe earn a little bit more. It is monies that have been invested, so we are seeing a return, and where we had some additional monies fall from free cash, that we should, at this point in time, go with scenario 2, and they agreed. The projects specifically that we are looking to fund are the cruiser for the police department, the JAWS for the fire department, the library flooring and HVAC, and then over at the Bagnell School, we're looking at the 911 system, the cafeteria door removal for lockdowns, as well as removal of an oil tank that is no longer being utilized, but needs to be maintained and serviced and costing us money. The last item is the trackless tractor. And then, again, those free cash numbers are also based on some of the other items that we usually have, which, OPEB stabilization, buyback, capital, municipal building, and MS4.
Are all in there.
And that's all included in that remaining balance of the $130,521.
That's all included, and then there's a remaining balance of
Yes,
130,000.
correct.
And then the proceeds from the sale of the Old Town Hall, that will still just,
That will continue to be in the bank account and continue to be invested.
and since the Board of Selectmen now is the Capital Planning Committee, that's been voted, it's been approved or adopted, and we really don't need anything from us except to know what's going on.
Other than when we start to go through the budgetary season and we put the warrant articles together and the finance board
And
will need to make
We'll
recommendations.
make our recommendations then, okay. So that's the funding sources for this, for fiscal year '24. And then, does the plan project going forward?
We're starting to get more into that. Remember, the capital plan historically has been to identify the projects and when they need to be funded and when they were projected to be funded. This is now taking it a step further and actually trying to identify funding sources now and out. And so as we have the debt exclusion with the school, and we have some of our other outstanding debt items, such as the 150 Center Street, the fire truck, some of the equipment, we're trying to take a look at that and see exactly, what the market is doing, and essentially whether or not we can add anything to that without taking on additional debt that was just unsustainable. We're also trying to take a look at, bundling certain projects and what that would do for us. We have a couple of larger items that need to be funded, such as the roofs over at the public safety here in the library, whether or not it makes financial sense to bundle that together and try and go and take on some debt. And FY '25, if the market turns around in the next fiscal year as the interest rates are changing, we don't foresee them being anything we want to bond for next fiscal year, but the following fiscal year, it might be, the market might lend itself to want to move forward with something of that nature. So we are working closely with Hilltop Securities and trying, as you say, to plan out not just what we're doing for this upcoming fiscal year, but what we hope to do moving forward. And that's why the document will be a living document that will be constantly changing throughout the year, and those updates will be shared with the Capital Improvement Committee, the Board of Selectmen, and the Finance Board.
Fantastic. Any comments, feedback, any?
I'm just thinking that's way too much forward thinking. You're going to get yourself in trouble.
Okay.
It's a good thing.
I think anticipating options, choices, possibility, looking forward is,
Is the way it should be,
yeah,
absolutely.
yeah.
And finding ways to fund it before you have to pay the man,
Yeah,
it makes a lot of sense. It's the kind of forward thinking that's been lacking
yeah.
for decades. So it's nice to see it come around. I just worry about her future. It's so far out of the box.
Stay in the box.
You're like a rebel all of a sudden.
Well, we all know that a budget is a plan. It's a working document. It's, you know,
It's fluid.
it's food.
It's subject to change without notice, based on market conditions and trends. And you try to take advantage when the trends are good and stay away when the trends are bad.
So great, thank you. I think that's a great update, and I think it's a great plan. We reviewed the plan at our last meeting, and just hadn't known that, this update is that it's been, a plan has been adopted, so, great. And a plan has been adopted in December. So, great. The next item I had was the wage and classification study, and I only put this on the agenda because I saw it on the Board of Selectmen's agenda, so I just didn't know if there was an update, so I think there's not, but go ahead.
Sorry, unfortunately, there's not. I did reach out to Mary Accardi over at the Collins Center. The chair of the Board of Selectmen had asked for an update of the study and where it was, and so I had reached back out to her, and I had done so back in Thanksgiving, and I had not heard. They did finalize the descriptions of all the jobs, but they have not finalized the actual wage portion. And as I mentioned at the Board of Selectmen meeting, they are also performing a wage and job classification study over in West Newbury. And I have heard through the grapevine that they have just about released those numbers to their select board as well as their town manager. And I think that they're making a presentation to their departments and their staff. So that, to me, would mean that we're next in line. And so based upon those signals as well as initial conversations, we should be receiving the actual wage study, I want to say, by the end of the year, if not the very beginning of January.
So you anticipate it being useful information for budget?
Yes,
Season.
definitely.
And for the record, in the peer community analysis from the Division of Local Services, West Newbury was not a comparable community to Groveland. So they're our neighbor. They are a wonderful community, but their demographics are just different enough for the recommendation to be out of our community loop, so.
To be compatible in any kind of analogy. Yeah,
Merrimack was in, but West Newbury was not.
right. It's like comparing Five Guys to McDonald's.
Yeah. So that's good. It'll be interesting, and I'm glad it'll be useful for our next planning cycle.
It did mention that so we did have our monthly or bi-monthly team meeting that I hold with the departments, and I did let them know that we should be receiving that information shortly. A lot of them are eagerly anticipating the results of that particular study. A lot of them asked to, how can we submit our budgets by the end of the year without having that information. The direction and instructions to the departments were to take into consideration no more than a 2% cost of living increase for any and all salaries unless there was a contractual obligation that needed to be met. So I did try to explain to everyone again that this study is really a tool to get us in line with where we need to be, but it is not a guarantee that whatever is in that document is going to be afforded to that individual. It is really just an opportunity for the town to take into consideration amending the way that we approach salaries in comparison to other communities and also in reference to that particular job. It may, in some cases, involve step increases, what those step increases look like. That would make it a little bit more obtainable for a community of our nature to meet those. It can't ever just be, well, you're being paid $10,000 less than this person, so here you go, you get your $10,000. It will have to be a strategic approach by the town because, you know, it's a very complex type of situation when you have multiple employees and there may be multiple employees who are under where others of their position are in other communities. But like in a business, we have to be competitive and we have to recruit and we have to be considerate about that in a very sensitive way because unlike a business, we rely on our taxpayer dollars to fund all of that. So I did try and share that all with them. It's not really an easy pill to swallow. I think you can all really understand that. But I do think that they're all very appreciative that we are taking this step and getting that information. And I think it will be a really good conversation to have with them, especially during the sit-down with the finance board when they come to you, and make sure that we can be mindful of that information in comparison to what we have for challenges in front of us.
Yeah. I
Now,
think, oh, go ahead, Bill.
what if, scenario, what if the study comes back and some of the salaries we're paying are over? Has that reality sunk in?
It could very well be the case.
Absolutely. That door could swing both ways.
Everybody thinks that the grass is greener on the other side, so I'm sure there's that expectation, but what we find out in the study, we will not know until we have the study before us.
Right. I know that in the past, there was hesitation to take on a study like this because we likely will not have the resources to take all of the recommendations into consideration. But now that we're at a point that we have a town administrator, we have somebody to oversee plans and strategic goals, I think that it makes sense to have accurate information. I feel that compensation is a very personal thing. People leave their home, they leave their kids every single day to go to a job, and you do your best, and you want to be acknowledged for that, and you want to be compensated appropriately. And I 1,000% agree with that. It makes sense. And budget season has been very difficult when people aren't comfortable with their compensation, and we're an advisory board who doesn't necessarily have access to all of the information that really goes into that very complicated equation. So I think that the town investing in a study to put goals in place and to, even if we can't, and that, I know that will be such a difficult pill to swallow if this is the range, but I think what it will do is it will give us very clear priorities and give us the direction to get to a, a fair place for our employees, and that's where we want to be. It's where we want to move toward, but we want to do it with depth that we didn't have before of information, so.
We also have to do with understanding what you can commit to.
Yeah.
And while I agree with you in one respect, it's, I don't so much believe in, you show up and you get rewarded for showing up. It's like participation trophies are great. They belong in Little League. After that point, showing up just, isn't enough. You show up at your job every day, but you don't really, you're not really invested in it. You're not really trying to take it to the next level. You're just showing up. I don't think that should ever be rewarded. It's you know, you go to a job and you should always want to make it better, right? Find a way to get more out of your day, get more out of your resources. Those people should be rewarded. The folks that show up, and this goes for, you know, private industry, municipalities, whatever, the folks that just show up and go through the motions, you know, it's not enough, in my opinion. That kind of work ethic shouldn't be rewarded. You know, we should reward people that really go and strive to go above and beyond every day. You know, knowing that, you know, everybody's not going to have their A game every day, but, you know, the majority of the time.
I don't disagree with that. If I said something that implied otherwise, then that was a miscommunication on my part. I don't think I
Yeah,
meant to imply that. I do work off the premise that most people want to be proud of the work that they do, and that they do come to their work to do a good job. I think that you first, you know, assume that's happening, and if not, then those are other situations that you take up as a personnel or a performance issue, but
okay.
I do think
I
that
misheard you, and
people have
we're in total agreement.
care,
We're
yeah.
both in the same direction.
Yeah, yeah. So, I think it'll be a really, really great tool to have this year, and yeah. The next item was that, unless there's no other comments, right, on the wage and classification study? The next item was the budget review schedule. We had a request from the town clerk, who was scheduled on February 1st. The clerk has a conflict that day. So, we can reschedule that easily enough. I just held off until our meeting because I didn't know if we would have any other requests that would come in that we would take into consideration together, but no?
Nothing has come to me.
Okay. So, why don't I just make a request that the town clerk and the council on aging switch? They're both the first meeting on, the council on aging is the first meeting on January 18th, and the clerk is February 1st, so with the council on aging, it might be beneficial for them to have the benefit of a little bit more time anyway. What do you think?
We could do that.
Okay, I'll
We
make
can
that,
propose it to the Council on Aging, and if there's a conflict, we can ask.
so I'll make that recommendation. And otherwise, I'll just find somebody else and make a request for that. Any other comments for now as far as budget planning and preparing and scheduling goes?
Not necessarily. I did have the initial meetings with the departments and the accountant. So we sat down with everyone and we kind of just kind of genuinely asked, what do you see coming up in the next fiscal year? Do you have any concerns? Is there anything that you're expecting from any, upcoming legislative changes or just anything that we should be aware of? They were very responsive. A lot of the departments followed through with the suggestions from the instructions to keep the 2%, to be mindful of the fact that we're not anticipating large new growth numbers, so therefore we're not anticipating a huge rise in revenues of any sort, and that we're also anticipating some potential issues with the school side of things and maybe even a potential override. So overall, I thought the discussions were really productive, and I thought they were well received. I got a lot of good feedback. A couple of instances, both the town accountant and I was like, that line item looks a little low based upon what we're seeing this fiscal year. You might want to increase that just a little bit. And they were like, wait, what? You're asking about increasing a line item? So I think that just that like dialogue of back and forth, like, no, we understand, but okay, so if you do need to upgrade this, but we are seeing that you're not necessarily spending that much in this line item, maybe we just kind of shift that a little there, or maybe you level fund this and you only ask for an increase there. So I did think it was a healthy exercise for everyone involved. So we were really excited to get some positive feedback. The budgets went out, or the, excuse me, the ClearGov opened for them to post their budgets last Friday. So I've had a couple of people put their requests in, and hopefully they'll be all submitted by the end of February as required, and I can begin to assemble the lovely binder that you will all have hopefully the second week of January. And in the meantime, I'm also assembling my forecasting for revenues and just putting together some different scenarios for the budget proposals from those initial conversations that I've had with those departments.
Awesome. Their requests are due back, what, you said February?
December. So
December.
their requests are due, the ClearGov, I opened the ClearGov portal for them to submit their budgets on last Friday, and they have until December 31st
Okay,
to submit their requests.
okay. So those will all be received for our reviews. I heard you say February. You must have been
If I did, I'm sorry.
referring to something else.
I misspoke.
I might have heard something wrong too, so, okay, awesome. And, so I'll follow up on that switch. The meeting minutes,
I sent out the meeting minutes from the October 19th meeting on Monday, asking for any comments or questions. Ruth sent back just two very minor comments. I had an extra word in the first sentence of the capital plan, and then in the second sentence, I said review, but it should be reviewed. So just minor changes there.
Move to accept as amended.
I'll second that. Any other comments? No? So vote to approve the minutes? Were you,
I wasn't there.
then you need to
Abstain.
abstain.
Oh, I abstained.
So 3 and 1.
Yep.
Next agenda item, we're almost done. Couple little things left, but the next one is, I wanted to have a brief discussion about member recruitment. I'm so sad to report that a longtime member of our board, Teresa Dunn, has resigned. I 100% understand. Teresa has a fair amount of personal obligations. She's got several grandchildren now that have been keeping her very busy, and I understand that she has a lot on her plate, and the finance board has been a casualty of that. I want to thank Teresa wholeheartedly for all of her input over the years. She really was such a faithful and dependable member of this board and really just of the community in general. You know, I expect that she'll still pop up and around Pumpkin Fest time and what have you, but she just has so much history. She has so many connections. And one of the things that I appreciate so much about Teresa during the budget review time is her knowledge of the trucks from her experience with her own personal business. She's just very familiar, had a lot of memory off the top of her head when we would talk about different capital requests and stuff. So I thank Teresa so much for her contributions, and I'll miss her, and I'm sure that we will stay in touch. That said, it's budget season coming. We are a 7-member board with 2 alternates. We now have 6 members, and both alternates are vacant. We have another existing member who has had some struggles sometimes getting to meetings, and all of us have stuff that comes up. We have lives, we have jobs, we have kids. So I just am really making a call for member recruitment. Really, our town services, our town employees rely so heavily on this board to, if we don't have enough people to come to a meeting, we can't hold a meeting. And once our budget season starts, when we review, when I say budget season, I mean our meetings when we review our budget items with all the various department heads. You know, these are our employees who are staying late after work to come and meet with us and have an opportunity to review their budget. And I would just really hate for that to be on the docket and have us have to cancel and reschedule. It would get really complicated and ask more of people's time than we already are by planning it out well. So I would like maybe for us to just put some sort of a notice together and maybe post it on social media, get some feelers out there. For our town employees, for the residents of our town, it's really just such a vital role. I think that this is a very respectful board. I think that we work really well together. I think that we appreciate everybody's contributions. And so I really hope that, that we'd get a few people that might be willing to pitch in and step up and support the town, the employees, the services that we provide. So you could reach out. Now, if anybody does want to follow up on my plea, how should they connect with us, would you recommend?
They're more than welcome to email me or call me or drop into my office and discuss. They can obviously fill out, I can create a form on the website if there's anyone who's interested in just filling it out online. You can also go onto our website and just put in a general comment that will get directly delivered to my email address. So it's kind of whatever the finance board would like. I'm happy to be the intermediary to get that
That would be
information
great.
to you. So you can
I'd be
share it.
happy to talk to anybody. There are, what would you say, 6, 8 meetings over the winter into the spring to assemble the budget, but it's really, it's where the residents of the town get to have input to the recommendations. It's just, we make a comprehensive review of the requests, and we make recommendations of how we think is the best way to share the resources of the town and make some advisory decisions. If you have financial expertise, human resources expertise, that's welcome, but it's not necessary. If you just care about the town and you have some free time and you would like to get to know some of the residents a little bit, then reach out to us. We'd love to have you. Anything else on recruitment? We'll post something.
In general, Rebecca, do you know off the top of your head how many positions on committees and boards are open in the town? How many people we'd need to fill all the boards and committees in the town?
Not off the top of my head. I know that we actually were doing really well. And then recently there has been a lot of resignation. I know there's a lot of turnover in the Council on Aging. But otherwise, I think relatively most of our boards are staffed. Or pretty well, I think. I mean, the Planning Board, Zoning Board of Appeals, Board of Health has 3 members, the cemetery is elected, the Board of Assessors is elected. So I can't say for certain, but overall, I think we're in good shape, but yes, recently there has been a lot of turnover.
How many boards or committees are on the tipping point, meaning that if one member were to resign, they wouldn't have a quorum?
Mostly on our elected side, more than our appointed side. But I can't think of any that can't operate with one more resignation,
So just us?
essentially. Well, even with this board, it's more, a resignation wouldn't impact the board as
Just
much as
enough.
attendance would. So there's still enough members.
Yeah, there's enough members. It's just, if somebody can't make it, then it just becomes,
They're very tight.
it becomes tight, yeah. And we understand that not everybody can make it to every single meeting. So a little bit of buffer just gives everybody a little bit more flexibility so that, you know, when things happen, we can continue on. And we also welcome input from as many residents as we can, so.
Many hands make for light work, right?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And also, the more residents you have, then hopefully the more,
Diverse demographic you have.
thank you, well, the diverse demographic that you have. Yeah, because we really do want representatives from different, you know, viewpoints, and that's important. That's why there's 7-member board plus 2 alternates, so that we can have that, so. So it would just benefit everybody, and it's a good experience, and it's a, you know, way to support the town, so.
Tell her it's fun. It's lots of fun. We have a blast here. It doesn't look like it, but we do have so much fun. You're
Hey.
missing out, all you folks
How
that
do I
aren't-
address all my emails? To the best board in Groveland. So that's my own personal opinion. So the next item, which is really our last item besides items not reasonably anticipated, this is just a disclosure on my part. I have recently become an employee of ClearGov, which is the budgeting software company that Rebecca referred to. So the town uses ClearGov's software to compile our town's budget. And I now work for this company, and so I just wanted to disclose that to make sure that I'm being open and transparent. I did discuss with the Massachusetts Ethics Commission whether or not this could potentially be a conflict of interest, and the Ethics Commission said, aside from making a disclosure, that really the software purchase decision was made by the town administrator, not by me, or even voted on or discussed at any point by this board. So really, the decision is not within this board's advisory capacity. And so the Ethics Commission sees no conflict. Going forward, since we do pay for this software on an annual basis, I personally will choose to abstain from voting on that aspect of the technology budget. But other than that, unless anybody else has any issues, again, the Ethics Commission saw no concern, and so I just wanted to put that out there. And if anybody else does have a concern, then I'd be happy to talk about it, but that is, it's been addressed through the Ethics Commission, so I'm comfortable with moving forward as a member of this board. The last item is items not reasonably anticipated at time of posting. Does anybody have anything else to review or discuss? No?
Just one thing real quick, Rebecca, can I just touch base with you about, the website and having like a minutes section? Cause we don't have any of the minutes up on the website, so I'd like to work on getting all of those up there. Of course. And easily findable for people.
Got it.
Thank you.
Great, well, thank you, everybody, and as we are signing off at 6:44, if anybody wants to go see the new middle high school, there's a band concert about to happen at 7 o'clock, so.
Oh, but I would like to wish everybody out there, seeing as this is going to be the last meeting of the year and the new year, a very Merry Christmas, a Happy Holidays, and hope and promise for a joyous New Year.
Same here. health, and happiness.
Motion to adjourn?
Second? All in favor to adjourn at 6:45. Thank you very much.